The air was thick with anticipation. In the makeshift camps scattered across the English countryside, thousands of young men sat in silence, their rifles cleaned, their gear packed, their minds racing. Tomorrow, they would cross the English Channel and step into the unknown, into history. Private James "Jimmy" Callahan, 19 years old, from Ohio, sat hunched over a wooden crate, scribbling a letter to his mother. His handwriting trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight of what lay ahead. "Dear Mom, if you're reading this, it means I made it to France. Or maybe I didn't. Either way, I want you to know I'm not scared. Well, maybe a little. But I'm ready. I'm doing this for you, for Dad, for everyone back home." Jimmy wasn't alone. All around him, soldiers were writing letters, some to wives, some to sweethearts, some to children they hadn't seen in years. Others sat quietly, staring into the darkness, whispering prayers or trying to memorize the faces of their comrades. In one tent, Sergeant Harold Hal Brenner, a 32-year-old veteran from Brooklyn, was giving a quiet pep talk to his squad. He'd seen combat in North Africa and Italy. Normandy would be different, he said. Bigger, bloodier. Stick together, watch each other's backs, and whatever happens, don't freeze. You move. You keep moving. Outside, the rain had started. A soft drizzle at first, then a steady downpour. The invasion had already been delayed once due to weather. General Eisenhower, the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, had made the call. June 6th would be the day. In a nearby airfield, paratroopers from the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions were checking their gear. They would jump into France under the cover of darkness hours before the beach landings. Many of them had never seen combat. Some were barely out of high school. Private First Class William "Billy" Monroe, 18, from Kansas, clutched a small Bible in one hand and a photo of his sister in the other. He had written, "If found, please send to my family," on the back of the photo. The chaplain made his rounds, offering blessings, comfort, and communion. Some soldiers accepted, others declined, preferring to be alone with their thoughts. In the command tents, maps were spread out, radios crackled, and final orders were issued. The code name was Operation Overlord. The beaches were codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. The objective: liberate France and begin the end of Nazi tyranny. But for the men on the ground, it wasn't about strategy or politics. It was about survival, about doing their duty, about not letting down the guy next to them. As midnight approached, the camps grew quieter. Some men tried to sleep, others couldn't. The sound of distant aircraft engines filled the air. The invasion had begun. June 6th, 1944, 6:30 a.m. Omaha Beach, Normandy. The ramp dropped, and hell opened. The first wave of American soldiers from the 1st and 29th Infantry Division stormed out of their Higgins boats into waist-deep water. Bullets sliced through the air like angry hornets. Mortar shells exploded in the surf. The sea turned red. Private First Class Robert or Bobby Jenkins, 20, from Michigan, had never seen combat before. He clutched his M1 Garand and leapt into the water. The weight of his gear dragged him down. He kicked furiously, gasping for air, bullets snapping past his ears. I remember thinking, this is it. This is where I die. But I kept moving. We all did. The beach was a death trap. German MG-42 machine guns, nicknamed Hitler's buzzsaw, rained fire from fortified bunkers above. The tide was rising, pushing bodies and broken equipment toward the shore. There was no cover, only tank traps, hedgehogs, and the bodies of fallen comrades. Lieutenant Richard Winters, later made famous by Band of Brothers, recalled the chaos. There was no time to think. You just reacted. You moved forward, or you died. Medics screamed for help. Wounded men cried out for their mothers. Some prayed. Some cursed. Some simply stared, frozen in shock. Captain Joe Dawson of the 1st Infantry Division led his men up a steep bluff under relentless fire. He was one of the few officers to survive the initial assault. His leadership helped secure a critical exit off the beach. We had to get off that sand. We had to break through, or we'd all be slaughtered. By mid-morning, the tide had shifted, literally and figuratively. Reinforcements arrived. Naval destroyers moved dangerously close to shore, blasting German positions with direct fire. One sailor later said, "We were so close we could see the Germans running." Slowly, painfully, the Americans pushed forward, inch by inch, yard by yard. They climbed the bluffs, cleared the bunkers, and secured the beachhead. By nightfall, over 2,400 Americans lay dead or wounded on Omaha Beach. But the beach was theirs. Before the beach landings, thousands of paratroopers were already falling from the sky. The 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions had taken off from England hours earlier in C-47 transport planes. Their mission? Jump behind enemy lines, disrupt defenses, and secure key bridges and roads. The night was pitch black. The planes flew low and fast. Anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. Many planes were hit. Some exploded mid-air. Others veered off course, dropping men miles from their intended zones. Private Thomas, Tommy Blake, from Georgia, jumped into the darkness with his heart pounding. He landed in a flooded field, alone, soaked, and disoriented. I couldn't see a damn thing, just water, mud, and the sound of gunfire in the distance. Groups of paratroopers scrambled to regroup. Some wandered for hours, others stumbled into German patrols and had to fight their way out. The terrain was unfamiliar, hedgerows, ditches, and stone farmhouses. Lieutenant Richard Dick Lutz, 24, from Pennsylvania, led a small group towards Ste. Marie-Église, one of the first towns to be liberated. Along the way, they encountered a German machine gun nest. Lutz ordered a flanking maneuver. It worked. The nest was silenced. We were scared, sure, but we had a job to do, and we did it. In Ste. Marie-Église, chaos reigned. A fire had broken out in the town square. As paratroopers descended, they were illuminated by the flames, easy targets for German defenders. Private John Steele of the 505th Paratrooper Infantry Regiment famously got caught on the church steeple. He hung there for hours, pretending to be dead while the battle raged below. His story became legend. I could see everything, hear everything. I thought I was done for. Despite the confusion, the paratroopers succeeded. They captured key positions, cut off German reinforcements, and paved the way for the beach landings. By dawn, many had regrouped. Others were still lost and fighting in small pockets, but their bravery had made a difference. June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach and beyond. In the chaos of battle, one group of soldiers ran toward the gunfire, not with weapons, but with bandages. Combat medics were the unsung heroes of D-Day. Unarmed, marked only by red crosses on their helmets and armbands, they risked everything to save the wounded. Private First Class Charles Chuck Morgan, 22 years old, from Illinois, had trained as a medic for months, but nothing prepared him for the horror of Omaha Beach. I saw a man with half his leg gone, screaming for help. I crawled through the sand, bullets flying over my head, and started patching him up. Medics carried morphine syrettes, sulfa powder, tourniquets, and field dressings. They learned to triage, deciding who could be saved and who couldn't. It was a brutal calculus. Sergeant Leo Doc Martinez, 28 years old, from New Mexico, treated over 30 men in the first hour of the landing. He dragged wounded soldiers behind tank traps, used helmets as water basins, and tore his own shirt for bandages. You didn't think, you just moved. You heard medic and you ran. Some medics were shot while treating others. Some were captured. Others became legends. One such man was technician 5th grade Desmond Doss. Though he fought in the Pacific, his story echoes the bravery of D-Day medics. He saved 75 men without firing a single shot. On D-Day, medics like Morgan and Martinez worked tirelessly. They set up aid stations and bombed out buildings, barns, and ditches. They used doors as stretchers and morphine as mercy. Many soldiers later said they owed their lives to Doc. Some never knew his name, just the Red Cross and the steady hands. By nightfall, medics were still working, still patching wounds, still whispering comfort to dying men. They didn't win medals, they didn't seek glory, but they saved lives and gave hope in hell. June 6, 1944. Normandy villages. As Allied troops stormed the beaches, the people of Normandy watched from shattered windows, cellars, and barns. For years they had lived under Nazi occupation, rationing food, hiding radios, fearing midnight knocks. Now the sky thundered with planes, the ground shook with explosions. Liberation had arrived, but not without a cost. Madame Elise Fournier, 47, lived in a small stone house near Sainte-Marie-de-Mons. She had hidden 2 British airmen in her attic months earlier. On D-Day, she huddled with her children in the cellar as shells fell nearby. We prayed, not just for ourselves, but for the boys coming to save us. In Sainte-Mère-Église, the town square was ablaze. Paratroopers landed in the middle of the chaos. Civilians ran for cover. Some were killed, others helped the wounded. Jean-Pierre Dubois, 15, watched from his rooftop as American soldiers exchanged fire with German troops. He later recalled, "I saw a man fall. Another dragged him to safety. I didn't know who they were, but I knew they were brave." Many villagers risked their lives to help the Allies. They guided troops through hedgerows, pointed out German positions, and offered shelter. Some paid dearly. In Carentan, a bakery was destroyed by artillery. The owner, Monsieur René, had refused to evacuate. He died protecting his shop and the soldiers he had fed. But there was joy, too. In Bayeux, the first town liberated by the British, crowds cheered as tanks rolled in. Women kissed soldiers. Children waved flags. The nightmare was ending. Still, the scars remained. Homes were gone. Families were shattered. Fields were littered with bodies. June 7th to 15th, 1944, Normandy and England. After the smoke cleared and the beaches were secured, soldiers began riding home. Their letters were raw, emotional, and deeply personal, windows into the soul of war. Private James Callahan, who had written to his mother the night before the invasion, survived Omaha Beach. His follow-up letter was short but powerful. "Mom, I'm alive. I saw things I can't describe. I lost friends, but I'm still here. I love you." Many letters were censored, details of locations and operations blacked out, but the emotion came through. Sergeant Hal Brenner wrote to his wife in Brooklyn, "I saw Bobby Jenkins go down. He was just a kid. I held his hand until he passed. I don't know how to explain this to you. I just want to come home." Some letters were humorous, attempts to shield loved ones from the horror. Private Billy Monroe wrote to his sister, "Normandy's got great mud. I'm thinking of bottling it and selling it back home. Tell Dad I'm still ugly, but alive." Others were philosophical. Lieutenant Dick Lutz wrote, "War changes you. I don't know who I'll be when I get back, but I know why I'm here. We're fighting for something bigger than ourselves." These letters were treasured. Families read them aloud, saved them in boxes. Some were published in newspapers. Others were never sent, found later in pockets of fallen men. The letters told stories of bravery, fear, loss, and love. They connected the front lines to living rooms. They reminded the world that behind every helmet was a human heart. June 6th through 8th, 1944. Normandy. The battle was won, but the cost was staggering. On Omaha Beach alone, over 2,400 Americans were killed, wounded, or missing. Across all 5 beaches, Allied casualties exceeded 10,000. The sand was soaked with blood. The sea carried away the fallen. Private Bobby Jenkins, who had jumped into the surf with hope in his heart, never made it past the shoreline. His body was later found near a tank trap, clutching his rifle. His friend, James Callahan, wrote in his journal, "Bobby didn't scream, he didn't cry, he just fell. I keep seeing his face. I don't know how to forget." In the days following the invasion, temporary cemeteries were established. Soldiers dug graves for their friends, chaplains read prayers. Helmets were placed atop rifles as makeshift crosses. Sergeant Hal Brenner buried 3 of his men in a field near Colleville-sur-Mer. He marked their graves with dog tags and stones. They were kids, brave kids. I promised I'd get them home. I couldn't. The Normandy American Cemetery was later built on that very bluff. Today, it holds over 9,000 graves, rows of white crosses and stars of David facing west toward the United States. Each grave tells a story, a life cut short, a sacrifice made. French villagers brought flowers, children placed notes. Veterans returned years later to salute their fallen brothers. Private Billy Monroe survived the jump, the mud, and the firefights, but he never forgot the faces of those who didn't. We were just boys, but we became men, and some never got the chance. D-Day wasn't just a military victory. It was a human tragedy, a moment of courage, pain, and loss. And those who fell, they are remembered, not just in stone, but in the hearts of those who lived. Late 1944 to 1945. United States, and Allied nations. The war raged on after D-Day, but for many who survived the beaches of Normandy, life would never be the same. Private James Callahan returned to Ohio in 1945. He was greeted by banners, hugs, and tears. But inside, he carried the weight of Omaha Beach, the faces of friends lost, the sounds of gunfire, the smell of blood and salt. I came home, but part of me stayed in France. Veterans tried to resume normal life. Some went back to school, others started families. Many never spoke of what they saw. Sergeant Hal Brenner opened a hardware store in Brooklyn. He kept a photo of his squad behind the counter. Customers often asked about it. He'd smile and say, "Those were my boys, brave as hell." Private Billy Monroe became a teacher. He taught history, but not just from textbooks. He told his students about the mud, the fear, and the courage of D-Day. I want them to know what freedom costs. Some veterans struggled. Nightmares, flashbacks, and survival guilt haunted them. The term PTSD didn't exist yet, but the pain was real. Support groups formed, letters were exchanged, reunions were held. At one gathering in 1964, dozens of D-Day veterans met in Normandy. They walked the beaches, visited graves, and shared stories. One veteran stood silently at a cross marked Robert Jenkins. He placed a photo and whispered, "You saved me, Bobby. I never forgot." The legacy of D-Day lived on, in museums, memorials, and memories. The courage of those who fought shaped the world. Their sacrifice built peace. And though time passed, their stories remained. "We were just kids," Callahan once said, "but we did something big, something that mattered."